Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the world's principle-centered leaders. We're sharing this conversation between myself as Lord Hastings, Professor Hastings at the Utah State University, the Stephen Covey Institute, Professor Craig. We're teaching a series on understanding leading in a world with constant change. But we're interviewing this afternoon with Sir Paul Polman, and delighted to have Paul Polman join us. Good afternoon.
Hey, Michael, thanks for the opportunity. I was looking forward to it. And good to see you as well, by the way.
Thank you. It's great to see you too.
Too long.
Far too long.
We're all getting the COVID blues.
Well, we're definitely getting the blues. You look like you have a delightful setting behind you, but I know that's one of those false ones. But it's lovely to see you, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us. So let me start by really asking you a question, which is about, for many CEOs of big companies, and you are CEO of one of the world's biggest corporations, Unilever, when they get to that point of retiring and stepping away, it's easy just to sort of disappear, do something else. But you've dug in, and you've dug in by building new alliances and new networks. What are the instincts deep within you that kind of keep you going, and that are the fire within you that keeps you so positive?
Well, first of all, it's better to be positive than negative, because you all have the same life, and a positive person has a little happier life. So I always think that's a better road to take, obviously. And I know we're talking to wonderful people in Utah, but you can have the choice if the glass is half full or half empty. And I know it depends if you're pouring or drinking, but I'd rather see the world a little bit more, the glass half full. And one of the things I've realized a little bit later than I would have liked to is that we are just lucky people. When I was born, I was born in the Netherlands in 1956. It was after the Second World War. The older I get, the more I realize how close that was to the war. But, we had food at home, so I didn't go stunted or didn't have food security issues. We had bar soap at home, so I didn't have sanitation issues. We had a toilet at home, so we didn't have open defecation. I was lucky to be born in the Netherlands, where the government pays for education. So otherwise I wouldn't have been talking to you. We had 6 children. My father couldn't go to school because of the war. He had to work very hard with 2 jobs to make a living. So the older I get, the more I realize how lucky we were that we won what I call the lottery ticket of life. And if you win the lottery ticket of life, then you unfortunately only belong to about 5% of the world population right now. Yeah. There's 3.5 billion people living on less than $5 a day. I can't even imagine it. Nearly 1 billion people going to bed hungry every day, not even knowing if they wake up the next day. 2.5 billion people, no access to clean drinking water or sanitation. So if you've won the lottery ticket of life, I feel it's your duty or your obligation to put yourself to the service of others. And it's perhaps selfish even, because, the sweet spot is when you realize that unconditionally investing in others will actually give you a higher return than if you myopically invest in yourself. And it's very selfish, because in the sense, it also makes you feel better yourself. But it's, I find it a healthy selfishness.
That's a very radical way to put it, Paul, is to describe that the commitment to give, of course, is a benefit to receive at the same time. And a lot of us don't naturally tend to think of it like that, as though giving something is losing something. But you're saying giving something is gaining something.
Well, we all know the story of the Good Samaritan, and the Pope put it in his latest encyclica. But the question is, who gained more, the Samaritan who helped the beggar, or the beggar himself? So I think in giving is a lot of receiving, and any culture that wants to function and live in harmony with others needs to give as much or more. Stephen Covey, which I had the pleasure to know, and actually he gave me the training on the 7 Habits, which was one of the finest books I read and still enjoy. So I became a trainer of trainers. But he talked always about depositing in your bank account before you could withdraw. And it's all about that. And I think the more you put in your bank account, be it as a company or be it as an individual, then at the times you need it, you can count on others, and your system, your ecosystem you live in becomes very stable, very reassuring, very, in a sense, comfortable. Not in a financial sense, but in a spiritual or in a values sense.
I remember, Paul, when shortly before you retired from Unilever, and we had breakfast together in your office, and I remember asking you, well, what next? And your first instinct was to say the Kilimanjaro Blind Trust, the women in particular you're committed to at the base of the Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And just tell us a bit about that, why you're so committed to blind people somewhere in the middle of Africa, which most people have never heard of.
Well, there are 240 million visually impaired people, 40 million children, less than 10% go to school. I think what COVID has shown as well, it's not an equalizer. It's actually made the differences worse. People with disabilities have suffered disproportionately from this crisis. By the way, there are 1.3 billion people with disabilities in this world, and it could happen to all of us at any time. That's 15% of the world population. But they need to work 4 times as hard to get a job. They were the first ones that were being laid off. Most of them live in systems without safety nets. So we decided to focus on the toughest of the toughest, which are blind children in East Africa. There are about 6 million in Africa alone. They don't go to school. They're marginalized in countries where the governments can barely take care of people that don't have the disabilities. You are really getting the wrong end of the stick. And I was very fortunate to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with an American friend, Eric Weihenmayer, who lives in Colorado, not far from where most of you live right now. And he wrote a book which is called Touch the Top. He is the only person that climbed 7 summits, including Mount Everest, but he's blind. He got blind at the age of 16, unfortunately. But he had parents who believed in him. And many of the blind people that get support, they actually like climbing. It's a very reassuring thing, believe it or not. So we decided to go with blind people from all parts of the world to Mount Kilimanjaro. We went with 8 people. We ended up with 6 on the top. And when we came down, we visited some blind schools in Moshi, Arusha, and some places around there. And the situation was in dire strait. It just wasn't how you wanted to live. And, something about the golden rule, do unto others as you like to have done unto yourselves. And I wouldn't want to be in that situation. So my wife and I said, we need to do something about it. So now we're about 11 years further. We have 26,000 children in schools. We're operating in 6 countries. We're probably the biggest organization for the blind now in Africa. And we're fighting, actually, we call it unlocking literacy for life. So it's getting them the Braille machines, getting them the Braille paper, the educational material, the teaching practices, the curriculum. Now we're getting into employment, obviously, because you really have to do it for that reason. And very excited because technology is coming in. Things like the Orbit, which you should Google, they are cheaper than the Braille machine, but you can download books. And all of a sudden, these kids don't have to wait 2 years. When everybody is done talking about Harry Potter, they can read them at the same time and be human beings for that matter. So I worked with the Perkins School for the Blind in Boston, Massachusetts, because we were doing training of teachers, etc. And these people are blind or deaf blind. In fact, Helen Keller went there. And their slogan is, all you see is possibilities. And Helen was often asked the simple question, what is it like to be blind and deaf? It must be horrible. And she had a very simple answer. She said, the worst thing is not being blind. The worst thing is having eyes and not being able to see. Oh. And unfortunately, we live in a world where too many people have eyes, but they are not seeing. So if we would just wake up collectively to this realization that we have to create a more equitable, more sustainable, more inclusive world, it would be so much better for all of us. So that's what we strive for. And it's very selfish because, again, anytime I feel a little down, or when the challenge is a little big, or we like to complain that we're at home because of COVID, I think about the blind and deafblind, the 12-year-old girl who wants to be a doctor, the 16-year-old boy who wants to be the Minister of Education in Kenya because he wants to change, the educational system for people with disabilities. A mother who has 4 children that were blind, deaf, that the doctors didn't diagnose in time, who became a teacher and now has a school with 100 children. And so these are the real heroes. These are the people that keep your both feet on the ground, keep you humble, and make us set ourselves the goals and objectives that probably are a little bit higher than we thought we were capable of. So anyway, after my retirement, I don't believe in retirement, because it sounds to me, Michael, that you are tired before and you're now tired again. And you know me better than anybody. That's not me. So I figured, and when I was a CEO, I could see that a lot of the CEOs want to do the right thing. There's no CEO who wants more unemployment, more air pollution, more people going to bed hungry, more destruction of our natural capital. So they're basically good people. I do believe that everybody is born with a little diamond inside, but we just need to make it shine. And if you are a CEO, you discover you have some limitations, boundaries that are put on you, the financial market, which is increasingly shorter term, governments that might not always work in the way you want to, different pressures in, Stephen Covey talks about seek a win-win, but the business world, unfortunately, hasn't always discovered that principle yet. So all that makes them be held responsible to a very high standard, but they can't deliver. So Imagine is very simply trying to solve the issue of moving systems and systems change.
Yeah.
We are not getting to where we need to be because we're working within the system, playing not to lose, incrementalism, and the system pushes back, whatever it is. So we don't achieve what we really need to achieve. And it affects our behaviors, it affects the results. So I figure in my theory of change that by sector, if I can bring about 20, 25% of the CEOs together across the value chain, we actually can create tipping points. We are now working with 30 CEOs in food, the biggest companies like Walmart would be an example of that, or ADM, a big trader, or Cargill. And we have 30 of them together now, more or less. And we're working on regenerative cotton, regenerative agriculture. We're working on livelihoods for smallholder farmers. We're working on nutritional habit changes with the consumers. So together we can do those things that otherwise we wouldn't. We work with 64 fashion companies and working on the climate change agreements from Paris, how to stay within the 1.5 degrees warming, how to get out of single-use plastics, how to move to regenerative cotton for clothes. They couldn't do it alone, but together they can. And there's something interesting that if you put these CEOs together, they become collectively more courageous.
Yes, yes.
And basically focus on enlarging the pre-competitive space. I always say you should not compete about the future of humanity. So that's why we focus on. We try to do it with fun. Passion is important. Positive attitude is important. But it's a very purpose-driven thing. But we like to do it with people we enjoy being with.
And you, Paul, you just exude this enthusiasm, passion, energy, drive, intelligence, and you were undeniably a hugely successful CEO, again, of one of the biggest corporations and networks in the world. How did you drive through such a big business with so many places of manufacturing and distribution? How did you get that mission into the DNA of Unilever?
Well, one of my previous bosses told me once a long time ago, when I tried to climb up the corporate ladder, that the best thing that can happen to you is inherit a low base and a lot of reserves. So when I came to Unilever, which is a great company with a lot history, but it had lost its mojo a little bit. But I did inherit great people. I did inherit a low base, and I did inherit a lot of reserves. So I've been a little bit lucky in that sense. But I think the first thing you always need to do, Jim Collins in his book From Good to Great talks about nurturing the core before you stimulate progress. So I went back, I came in from Nestle at that time, where I had been CFO and running the Americas. Before that, I'd made a long career at Procter Gamble. So the people in Unilever difficult that the company's situation was at that time, saw me as a little bit of an intruder. So I figured out, I have to earn respect. You cannot ask for respect. You have to earn respect. Like you cannot ask for trust. You have to be trustworthy. So I went back to the history of the company, tried to understand up to the origins of Lord Lever, who already was a very interesting man talking about shared prosperity. He was the one in the UK, as you know, that introduced pensions. He guaranteed the wages of his people during World War I and employed the wives. And then when they came back, not surprising, they had the highest number of volunteers. When he went into the House of Lords, the bastion that you represent, I always feel very safe when I talk to Michael because I'm always close to the Lord. But when he went into the House of Lords, he took the name of his wife. Even today, I find that stunning. Unfortunately, not many do. So he was an unusual man. And the more I studied him and why he created these brands, the more I saw this purpose. In his time, it was called making hygiene commonplace. Because in Victorian Britain, 1 out of 2 babies didn't make it past year 1 because of the issues of hygiene. And now it's in sub-Sahara Africa, it's in India. So we created this purpose for the company that we put in the middle of our business, which is make sustainable living commonplace. I always felt that the purpose of a company is to profitably address the issues of people and planet. I've always felt that companies are there to solve issues. And if you give them validity to be around, because the world has to give them validity to be around, they have to make a positive contribution. If you don't make a positive contribution, why should these companies be around? But they've become so opaque, so far removed, so impersonal that we let the companies get away with a lot of things. The Milton Friedman doctrine came in of it's only about maximizing shareholder value, which we now know obviously is a load of rubbish. It doesn't serve anybody except a few billionaires. So I thought we'll go and make a system that works for billions of people. Create a business model that is longer term to address these issues. Put the sustainable development goals, which I had the fortune of helping develop, put them in the middle of our business model. And lift all of our brands, which is a consumer goods company, and lift our overall company up around a bigger purpose. Instead of selling bar soaps like Lifebuoy, we said, no, we're going to help a child reach the age of 5. 4 million children die every year of infectious diseases. You can cut that by 75% with hand washing. So we said, let's reach 1 billion people with hand washing. We can afford to do that because we were selling every day to several billion people. We were in 190 countries. And most people have our products at home. So no government could set that target. But for us, it was a target that we thought was perhaps audacious, makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, which is a good thing, but was achievable. We said we needed to create 5 million jobs for smallholder farmers. Half of them, we wanted them to be women. We wanted all of our products to be produced sustainably because anything not sustainable is stealing from future generations. Last year's Earth Overshoot Day was August 26th, I think, August 22nd or 26th, which means that after that day, we are literally stealing from future generations. I don't want to be part of that. So we said, let's go to sustainable sourcing for all of it. Now it's tough to do. You cannot do it all alone. So we said very simply, we need to create this objective, but then we can only do it in the partnerships. And that became the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. We put 50 targets out there. You can look at it online. People said, why are you doing that? There's so many targets. But I figured the more you put publicly out there, the more you build trust. Transparency builds trust, and trust is that basis of prosperity. And then we said something that we said we can't do it alone and we don't have all the answers. And that made us a little bit more human. I think we have too many CEOs that have lost being real human beings. A good leader, first and foremost, is a good human being. So we started getting these enormous partnerships, many that you are aware of, that you are participated in. You've helped us create. And to make a long story short, we became the most desired employer in most countries that we operate. We had 2 million people applying to us every year. We were the most respected company in GlobeScan, twice as trusted actually as companies like Patagonia, which was amazing to us. But at the end of the day, by focusing on our values, we also created value. And, the share price was up nearly 300% over 10 years. And our shareholders have been rewarded, but as a result of what we did, not as a sole objective of our focus. So, so we showed that responsible business can be done in a good way for all your stakeholders. And increasingly, I think it will be the model. If COVID has shown us anything, is that we can't have healthy people on an unhealthy planet. It has shown the relationships, between many things that we didn't want to see. But now nature, climate change, human rights, if you want to, social inequality, planetary health, it's all becoming clearer to people now. And not surprisingly, you see companies that are operating under ESG doing better. You see the financial market waking up because they're seeing the opportunities. You see Tesla being worth more now than all the other car companies combined. So I think the train is moving. We just need to focus now on speed and scale.
Yes. Well, let me hand over to Professor Craig to ask you a question or two.
Pleasure to have you with us, Lord
Hey,
Paul. Thank you. Question: with all the very ambitious and inspiring goals that you've given your life to and your organization to, one of Stephen Covey's teachings was public victories are preceded by private victories. These young leaders that are with us, these students, are looking at their life ahead and what it will take for them to become leaders. Could you give us a little insight into your own personal private victory habits that have led to your ability to influence and be a good leader?
Well, it's difficult to say for me because I don't like to, first of all, talk about myself. And secondly, if you ask my wife, you'll probably get a totally different answer than if I give you the answer. And my mother probably has another story, so I would feel very uncomfortable about it. But, as I said, a good leader is, first of all, a good human being who understands that by putting the interest of others ahead of his own or her own, he ultimately will be better off himself as well. It's about having a high level of awareness of what's going on in the world and an ability to engage, It's a systemic thinker would be another requirement because the issues are complex, and being able to put your arms around it sometimes feels like a balloon with water in it that pops out on all the different sides, and being able to work in partnerships. Many CEOs are not. They think they are so holy and, have so many people around them that tell them how wonderful they are. They've forgotten how the real world works. And so you need to work with other people, and that requires different skills. You need to think a little bit multi-generational. I've been lucky, as I said, I had great parents. I have, my leadership is still developing because it forms with all the things that happen in your life. Climbing the mountain for 12, 13 days with my blind friends was a life-changing experience for me and my children. I was in Mumbai when unfortunately the terrorist attack was there, and I saw many of them losing their lives, but at the same time I saw the goodness of how many people were helping us and the dark sides of poverty, because a lot of it is driven by desperation. I was in Newcastle where I ran a company, and I saw for the first time second generation unemployment. Shipbuilding, steel and coal had gone, and the only thing a girl could get when she was 14 was a baby. And so how do you give these people a chance? How do you make it function? A business cannot function either in societies that fail. So I've always felt that if you can do something about it, then it's a very important thing that you are part of that. And it's rewarding. It's actually not that hard to do. For some reason, we are given, there's always a reason why we're here, I believe. It's not by coincidence that we're here. And with that realization comes a duty. And if you're in a position to do something, you need to do something. I don't want to become political because in the US, that's always a very emotional issue. But if you don't say anything on things that would undermine basic values, then the boundaries get moved all the time until something happens that surprises people. All of a sudden, democracy is at risk. The Capitol is being stormed. It's not the issue of the moment. It is the reasons that led to it that we should have prevented in the first place. It is not to blame a president that is being elected. It is often that we need to dig to the root causes of why some of these people got elected. And these need to be addressed. And if you're in a position to be able to do something about that, you should. And I have some clear principles in that the world can only function because I do believe that there are universal values. There are also unique values that might be in your family or in your community, or like your Mormon values, if I may, if many of you online have those values, which I fully respect. But there's a values of the state of Utah, there's a values of Americans, but there are also global values. And dignity and respect, equity, compassion, these are global values that we always need to fight for, because anytime those are eroded in whatever matter, you erode democracy, you erode the future of human beings, the reason for being. It's a very important thing to me. And that's why I fight for a lot of things, because you basically fight for humanity. And we might disagree on some of the things, but I come from the Netherlands, so it's a very liberal environment. So people say, why do you fight for LGBT? Why do you fight for racial justice? Why do you fight for in gender equality? Which some people not necessarily subscribe to, but I fight for that because I think that is one of these underlying principles that, that everybody has the right to develop themselves to their fullest potential and have equitable opportunities like I've benefited from. So that drives me, and it will always until I'm not capable anymore. I'm moving on to another place, which I'll undoubtedly enjoy as well.
Wonderful. As a student and teacher of the 7 Habits yourself in your career, is there a habit that stands out to you that's had a real impact in your work and leadership?
Well, the habit I like the most is sharpening the saw. I'm glad he put that in, So, and sometimes I wish I could sharpen the saw a little bit more, but it's an important habit. But I think if you look at his 7 habits, they're all important, so it's difficult. But if I had to pick one, it's like people saying, which of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals would you hit? But I would say seek first to understand before being understood. It's probably at the roots of a lot of things. If we can, and the reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So if we can spend more time understanding each other. Multilateralism is at a low, right now in the world. Governments are not cooperating. There is schism in society that we conveniently blame on social media or other things, but it runs deeper. So if we could work on our habit of seeking to understand before being understood, I think would go far. It gets to empathy, it gets to compassion. And, so I'd probably pick that one, I think.
Profound. Lord Hastings, back to you.
Paul, thank you. Thank you for making the time for us, for our students. Thank you for literally the words that are behind you, which says imagine, and that you continue to imagine a better world. You continue to imagine a more responsible, more principled, more honest, more dignified, more equitable, more fair, more real human world. And thank you for always being so honest about the way you feel about love and your heart that you wear openly. So thank you for coming and spending time with us this afternoon. It's been a huge privilege for us. Thank you. Just thank you for you.
Mike, and thanks for the opportunity, Michael and Boyd, obviously. I just want to end by saying, 50% of the world population is below 30 years old. I see all the wonderful faces on the screen. There is no doubt to me, and this is why I'm optimist, that you are more creative, technology savvy, you think multi-generational, you work better in partnership. If 50% of the world population is below 30 years old now, the big secret I want to share is they're going to be 100% tomorrow. So it's important that you are getting a seat at the table. It's important that you get the table and count on us to support you. But this is your time now. We have 15, 20 years, I think, to implement really what the Sustainable Development Goals stand for, which is to irreversibly eradicate poverty in a more sustainable and equitable way. And it's well within our reach to do that. So I wish you all the success on your journey of leadership and journey on life. And thanks for all what you're doing.
Thank you, Paul.